Hi, and welcome to this episode of the podcast in partnership with Najahi Events and Smartcast, our awesome new sponsors. Go check them out. When we talk about space, there's always this select few people that have fulfilled the dreams of so many kids around the world. Think about it for a second. How many children have woken up and said, I want to be an astronaut? Well, today on the show, Nicole Stott is an astronaut. She has done spacewalks. She's lived on the space station. And she's here to share her story about what it's like living in space, what's funny about space, what's fascinating about space, and what she learned so that she can actively try and impact Earth and solve the problems we have with the climate and other issues that are down here on terra firma. Come and enjoy this episode because she's a lovely lady, okay? You'll get a lot of benefit out of listening to her and watching her, and enjoy the experience of talking to one of a very, very, very small group of people on this planet. So Nicole, thank you for joining us on the show today. It's really important, really, that I understand a bit more about you so that the audience can get a better understanding of the amazing experiences that you've had, which I suppose a lot of us kind of think we can imagine, but I'm sure the reality is much different to what we imagine. You know, as kids, many of them look out of the window and one day want to be an astronaut along with other great, amazing things, but most people don't make it there, do they? So Give me right now, so that everyone watching and listening to this can understand it, give me a sense of what it must be like to be up there.
Well, I think for one thing, you definitely develop a better understanding of the word awe. I think we use that word awesome all the time, for so many different things, and it totally applies to that experience being in space. Everything from, as you can imagine, from the floating and flying and kind of that liberated feeling of that to the view out the window, and then to knowing, I think, that you're part of something that really is ultimately about improving life on Earth. I mean, that's a pretty incredible thing. But I would say to people, as you introduce that, it's like, I had my own imagination of what it was going to be like, and I had very high expectations of the whole experience. And I can tell you, now I would say my expectations were probably here, and it's like that was, what it was. So, but I think that's true for a lot of things.
When I was a kid, I lived in Nigeria, and people used to say to me, what's Nigeria like? Yeah. And I'm like, there aren't enough words to describe Nigeria in a way that you will get it. You just need to go there and see it, because once you go there and see it, you'll know exactly what it's like, and we'll have kinship almost, because we've both been there. Is anyone able to explain it well enough to be able to make us feel enough what it actually is like?
I don't know, but I have, I just had the chance to go to Antarctica, which again is another kind of extraordinary adventure kind of thing. And while I was there, I kept thinking, man, this is like so otherworldly. It had these parallels to what it was like to be in space. And then it made me think, I can go in my own backyard and be in awe and experience the wonder of what exists around us. And I think in the end, that's really what being in space was like. It's like it opened up my mind, my heart to being, more aware to letting those things in. And I highly recommend, if you get the chance to go to space, please do it. But I don't think you have to go there to understand the feelings, the kind of the emotions that come from it, the, oh my gosh, we live on a planet kind of reality of who and where we are all in space together. And I don't know, but it is extraordinary.
Did you eventually normalize it because you'd spent so much time up there? Did it become very regular and you were every day, I suppose, doing various science experiments and learning various stuff? Did it just become, after a while, my place of work?
I think it became regular in that that's where I was, on this day-to-day basis at that point, but there was nothing regular about floating and flying and moving just effortlessly in 3 dimensions, just gently touching, a surface and being able to push from one end of the space station to the other. And I don't think you tire of that, of knowing that that's a very different experience, and to appreciate it. And certainly to be in front of one of those windows looking out back at Earth. And I wondered, actually, when I got there, I'm like, oh, being overwhelmed by it, the first few times looking out the window, I thought, oh, am I going to get to the point where I'm just going to pull the shade down and watch the movie kind of thing? Never. Every single time there was something surprising and stunning, and to the point of where during the workday, I actually had to set an alarm on my watch. If I went to the window during the workday, I knew that I would just be so sucked into that view that it would be a 90-minute orbit of the planet, and I'd be here in mission control, and I'm like, Nicole, it's time to go back to work. So I'd set a timer for myself, because it was just that immersive and transcendent, and all of those kind of words you can imagine.
If I go back to being a kid, there was a TV show called Space 1999.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of first TV show I watched about space. I didn't have Star Trek so much in my radar. It was Space 1999. And I so want it to be like that. Is it like that? Please tell me it's just like what I watched.
Yes, exactly like
Excellent,
that.
perfect, okay.
Yeah.
And so when you think about us on the planet and the damage that we're causing, the Earth is heating up. We have problem with the icebergs melting. We have problems with food security. We have soil erosion, and that's just to start the journey. And there are some great things being done, by the way, okay, in that space. Do you think, from your experience, that most people are still either naive or in denial about problems that we're causing? Or do you think we've got a chance of turning things around?
Well, I do think we have a chance of turning things around. I think there was a lot of the naivety and the denial out there as well. But one of the things I think that was most impressive to me about going to space, first of all, that all of these countries come, I was International Space Station timeframe, right? And which is still going on. I mean, for over 20 years, we've had this mechanical life support system in space that we've built to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally, right? And we've had representatives from over 15 countries up there peacefully, successfully working together with the mission to improve life on Earth. I mean, we're out in space, but ultimately it's about improving life on Earth. And to be part of that, where I know it's 7 people on a space station and maybe tens of thousands down here on Earth that are making all of that happen, and that it really is kind of this matter of scale. But I think it's just such a wonderful example of how we can come together to solve our most complex problems. I mean, it is a really complex thing to just get off the Earth, orbit the Earth, live and work there for a short period of time, get home safely, and yet we go there and we live together on this mechanical life support system, and we know every day as a crew, okay, I got to pay attention to how much CO2 is in my atmosphere. I got to pay attention to how much clean drinking water I have, the integrity of my thin metal hull, the health and well-being of all my crewmates, just so I can survive there before ever doing any of the science that goes on. And so I think that's the parallel to me that's just such a wonderful example for us, is that we have that going on right now. And if we just would learn our most important role, take on our most important role as crewmates instead of passengers here on Spaceship Earth, I think that's that first step towards the solution.
I was watching a documentary the other day about the HMS Duncan, which is the most advanced warship in the Navy, in the British Navy. And they were off to sea for 7 months, 270 crew. And they were going off into unknown waters, into hostile waters and stuff like that. So the camera crew followed them. And they followed the life of a few people on there, but one of them was the youngest member of crew. Yeah. So he was just a kid, yeah. So he got the worst place to sleep. He got all the usual stuff that you know about. And he said something that really kind of resonated with me. They've got these missiles. They've got the anti-aircraft this and all this wonderful stuff that they can do. This lethal machine, basically. And he said, it's interesting, I'm part of this fantastic crew of people, but nobody on here decides anything, really, because it has to be decided by a politician in London. And it just made me stop and think. And you know, we have a certain prime minister in our country at the moment, and whilst this is nothing to do with politics, we wonder, are these people capable of making the very best decisions so that the people on a 7-month voyage at sea, okay, are doing the right thing? And do you think that politics gets in the way of solving the problem sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the human nature of it, right? Sadly. But I also think that politics helped us do what we're doing on the space station. And that one of the greatest gifts of that whole program is going to be the establishment of these international relationships that in space right now and through the programs down here on Earth have somehow transcended that. And I'm not sure what the secret sauce is that has allowed that to happen, but I really believe that because we have these positive relationships on this orbiting spacecraft, that a lot of the things that are going on right now here on Earth between those same countries that don't seem all that great are a lot better off than they would be if we didn't have that going on. So, and I don't know if there's some way that they've managed to bypass the politics in it and then it has its little trickle effect across what's happening here on Earth, but whatever it is, again, a really great example of how we can kind of get past that stuff.
The population is going to grow and we're going to have 10 billion people on the planet eventually. How are you going to feed them? How do you feed them if we've got soil erosion problems? Okay, we don't have enough farmland to produce enough food for all of us to consume. Well, if we don't have a solution to that, we're in trouble, and I mean big trouble. And that's why I'm delighted to have a sponsor like SmartCast on the show, because they are actively working to solve this problem. By looking at vertical farming and food security, they are trying to create solutions that can produce fruits and vegetables, all types, to solve the problem of food security in the future. So go check them out. SmartCast Tech on Instagram. I think you find them there. They're doing some great work. You wrote a book.
I did.
You're here at the Emirates Festival of Literature.
Yeah.
So first of all, congratulations for writing a book.
Thank you.
Well, because I've written a book, it's not as easy as
it's not
people
easy.
think. It's a slog.
It is.
And
Yeah.
you've got to focus, and you have to keep going back to it, don't you? And then then you talk to other people that have written books, and like, why are you doing it that way? And then all of a sudden you're like, I thought that was how I was supposed to do it. And then you could watch too much on YouTube or Google too much, and then they tell you another way. So I've got some empathy for it. What was the journey like for you of putting that book together? How long did it take? And were you in a stage of being really happy with the results and some form of editing or publisher coming back to you go, no, we don't like this, we don't like that?
Well, I think I was really fortunate along the way. I really loved my editor with my publisher. I loved my book agent. I mean, they were all like really helpful along the way. I didn't know how I was going to do it at first. It actually was a couple years of just wondering if I really was going to do it. I knew I had a story to tell, but I still, initially hadn't quite worked out in my mind what the structure of it would be. Yeah. And I knew I didn't want to do the memoir. I didn't want to do the typical, here's how I became an astronaut thing and all of that. Not that that's not just so amazing, but but I felt like there was more to the experience than that. And so I'm also very thankful for a woman that I had as a book coach, who I honestly don't think I would have gotten through the whole process without her. And while she wasn't a ghostwriter or anything like that, just the skill she had, the talent to help me form the way I was going to put each chapter together and all of that was so helpful. And I would say from the time we started putting together this book, the book proposal, that whole thing, I just thought, I'm so old, I guess, I thought you still typed up the manuscript, put a string around, then you dropped it on somebody's desk or something. But no, you have to write this thing that's basically the book that's not the book. Yeah. And then all of these things telling how wonderful you are and that it's going to sell and all, and I'm like, what in the world? And so after we got done with that, which was, I would say probably the most painful thing about it to me, and then getting the publisher signed and all of that, because I definitely wanted to go the traditional route Because I would not be here talking to you or have a book done if I decided to go the self-publishing route. It just never would have gotten done. And I don't think it would be the quality that it is. And I don't think I would have gotten to the point where I really formulated the story I wanted to tell. So a couple years probably worth of the fork in the eye. But I'm happy. It's one of those things where we have all these sayings in the astronaut office, and it's not just for us, but like the pleasure is the pain. Mm-hmm. That one where in hindsight now, I'm really so thankful for kind of the painful process I had to go through too, because I think it resulted in a better product.
I'm reading a book at the moment by Johan Hari called Stolen Focus. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the amount of time that we actually nowadays can focus at our desk or at home. And lockdown came and people thought they were going to read Tolstoy or they were going to learn another language. He said, but you don't focus and you don't learn when you're in fear. And obviously through the period of the pandemic, people were in fear. So for me, I'm diagnosed as ADD anyway, so I'm starting on a back foot. Yeah. So I really sense the challenge that goes into writing a book, taking the time, going back to it and getting that done. It requires a lot of concentration. You've got it put together, you've published it, so happy days, that's all good. Yeah. Okay, tell us what the book's about.
So it's a lot about what we were just talking about, really how we have somehow managed as an international community to put this place in space and do this work that's all about improving life on Earth. And it kind of tells a story in seven chapters? 7 chapters of these ways of being, these ways of living as a crew on the space station. And everything from the understanding, when you look at the Earth from space, there's no doubt that we're all living on one planet, right? That there's this sense of interconnectivity to all of it, and the idea of how local really is global, global is local. There's no difference in those things. Everything we do in one place influences the other. These ideas of having to sometimes go slow to go fast, living like crew, not passengers. The details under the surface are sometimes the most important. And in the end, in whatever we're doing, we need to be making life better. And I think there's just examples of all of those things that come to us through the work on the space station, and they apply directly to the way we should be living down here on Earth. And in the book, through the encouragement of my publisher, we focused primarily on climate change, on the changing environment of our planet, as an example of how we could apply these things to the way we live on Earth.
And does that tie up much with the UN Global Sustainability Goals for 2030 and what their objectives are, or are you not really aligned with that? It just happens that there's coincidental aspects to it?
Yeah, I didn't deliberately say, for the SDGs, this chapter is 1 through 7 and this, none of that, but I think that it absolutely applies, because in that list of goals, every single one of them is associated with the other, right? And so to really achieve, food, what do we call it? Food security, yeah. Or reducing, poverty around the world, or water security, all of these things, they all tie together. And it all comes down to how we choose to behave, in one way or the other.
Yeah, it does, yeah. When I think about it, there's a lady that I interviewed that was on a documentary on Netflix called Losing Sight of Shore, where her and 3 other ladies rowed from San Francisco across the Pacific Ocean.
Oh my gosh.
To Australia. They were 8 months at sea. When they got to the equator, they got stuck in the doldrums, and so they were rowing for 2 weeks and they didn't move anywhere. And so we did a bit of a school tour here, and we were interested to learn the kind of questions that the kids had. And so some keen questions that young people have about space, you'll have been asked many times before, I'm sure. But one of the questions that kept being asked by the kids is, where do you go to the toilet when you're rowing on a boat?
I think we're much better off on a space station than we would be in a boat rowing in the doldrums. Yes.
And so her answer was, well, we call it bucket and chuck it, yeah. And the kids were like, well, really? And then also the food situation. is discussed a lot because they have this freeze-dried food that they have to have water to. They had 4 or 5 different choices, and the 4 ladies had one that was their favourite.
All the favorite?
All of them is their
favorite,
yeah. And so obviously the start of the trip, everyone's great, aren't they? Because this is not bad. I could eat chicken curry or something. I don't know what it is. And then slowly it ends up being the one that they like the least. And they said for the last 2 weeks we were eating stuff that we didn't want to eat and stuff like that. So when you go into space and you have to deal with the everyday realities of life along with everything else, that the food, does it taste of anything? Is it apart from nourishing, which I'm sure it has to be, is it enjoyable as an experience?
I thought so. I mean, I had my issues with the food for other reasons, because I think longer term, it's probably not the most nutritional, and there were things about it that I'd love to see changed. But I never went to a meal thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to find something that I'll enjoy eating. There was a really nice variety of food, because we can resupply from the ground. The cycle of that is quite nice. You're not getting stuck with just the cheese grits, which were not that good at the end. And not that hasn't happened before. There's been problems with cargo vehicles, so they've had that happen before. But everything was really good. And because it's an international partnership up there, I mean, we had food from all the 5 different international space agencies. So, and my favorite was the Japanese curries were they were delicious. And the Europeans had this chef do special things where we had this mushroom pate that was just basically ground up mushrooms and like hazelnuts and vanilla. It was so good. And, things like that, from each of the countries. The breakfast every morning for me was this Russian kind of porridge stuff that had nuts and fruit in it. And so I never felt like the food wasn't good. Yeah, nice variety.
Oh, that's good. It's good to know.
There were things I didn't want to eat.
Come on, what's the best thing we want to hear? What was the crummy stuff?
Well, and I wasn't a vegetarian when I was on station then, but I still didn't eat a lot of the meat stuff because the texture of the dehydrated meat was kind of a... You see the look on my face? It was kind of a grainy. So for me, if I could choose not to eat the beefsteak, I didn't do that. Yeah.
You avoided that kind of stuff.
I did. Yeah.
Tell me about Richard Branson.
Tell me about Richard Branson. Well, I've only ever met him once. And that was nice, very pleasant. So I don't know him in person as really very well. I like what he's doing. What I've seen in the space world, I like it. I like the way, at least through what you see in the media of his stuff online, how he engages with people. I have had quite a few friends who spent time on Necker doing, some of the sessions there, and all have come back with positive, nothing but positive things to say. So I'm hopeful there.
Is it space?
Is it where he's going? Is it space?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I don't, what's a mile or two? I don't know.
I wonder whether astronauts sit there and say, yeah, but that's not real space. I did real space.
I don't feel that way. I'm so hopeful for more and more people to have that experience if they want to, and I think there's the argument about the billionaires and all that stuff going on now. I'm like, you know what? It's going to take that for us to get to the point where it's more accessible. I mean, I probably 100 years ago couldn't have gotten on an airplane because I wouldn't have been able to afford it, and I just traveled here, for 15 hours, and so. It gives me hope. I think that, and I'm really excited. I know some of the people that have done those trips, and actually my commander for my first space shuttle flight is one of their pilots, CJ Sturkow, and so excited to hear and see what he's doing with all of that. Yeah.
So we've got this becoming more frequent, been more accessible from a cost perspective. That's only going to come down as the years go by. Whether that's in my lifetime or my kids or my grandkids, I don't know. But that's only going to evolve as time goes by. And so I think it means exciting possibilities for all of us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid first getting on an aeroplane. That was just an amazing experience. And
still is to me.
In this metal tube, and so these. this situation that we're in with the world evolving and the places that we're going and the things that we can do. You know, Elon Musk says we're going to have to leave this planet at some point. We're going to have to go somewhere else. We're going to have to live somewhere else. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that our grandchildren will be getting on some form of vehicle or machine and going to another planet to go and set up the rest of their lives?
I am a Star Trek kid, so I do imagine that. And you know, you mentioned Elon Musk saying we'll have to leave. I mean, I think we are going to need to do that, even if it's just from the adventurer, explorer side of things. I think it's in us to do that. But you know, going to Mars to me is not about abandoning Earth. You know, going to the moon, going to Mars, going interstellar someday. It's about, again, improving, protecting the, you know, the life support system. I mean, that we've been gifted here, I think. You know, you look at Mars. It's not saying, hey, come live the happy park lifestyle there. I mean, we are basically going to have to turn it into a spaceship in order to live there. And in the life cycle of Earth, you know, I don't know, how many billions of years it is before the sun decides that, you know, we won't be a planet anymore. But when that happens, Mars isn't going to be the place to be either. We're going to have to be out of our solar system in order to, you know, extend humanity beyond Earth. So all these are those little steps, I think, to making sure that happens.
Well, I just hope Darth Vader isn't there to have to face me.
Anything Darth-like we don't really want.
Don't like Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Don't be out there, Darth. Or Klingons.
Yeah.
Tell us the name of your book.
It's Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect It.
And how can people get it?
They can get it from any of their favorite bookstores, online, or I believe in the bookstore as well. And if you want more information about it, you can go to my website, which is NicoleStott.com.
Excellent stuff.
Yes.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come and join us today.
Absolutely.
It's been good talking
My pleasure.
to you. It's great to get an insight. And how many astronauts are there in the world?
Oh my gosh, I don't know right now. Probably 100 and something with all of the international community, and then less in all of time. It's including like the suborbital flights that we've just had recently. I think it's like 602 or 3 right now.
So
total.
You're one of 602, 3 people in the world out of 7.5 billion people that have done that. That's a very fancy club, isn't it? And then how many people have done a spacewalk?
Oh my gosh, probably on the order of 60-ish.
60 people on this planet have done a spacewalk, and you're one of them.
I think, don't quote me on that number.
And you're sat here in a hotel in Dubai right
Looking
now.
like an old lady, just sitting here.
Chilling out, telling me that you got a husband from the Isle of Man.
Yep.
Nicole, thanks very much for coming to join us
My
today
pleasure.
on the podcast.
Thank
It's been
you.
an absolute joy. I want to go into space now. All I want to do is go into space. I want to go on a rocket. Do I want to go on a rocket? Do I want to go on a space shuttle? I don't know. But I want to go and experience it. Nicole just describes it so nicely and warmly. And okay, the food might not be amazing, but what was I expecting anyway, you know? Gordon Ramsay's not going to be up there when I get to the space station if I was to go to space, sitting there with his kitchen laid out, making me my fabulous beef Wellington or something. When you're in space, you get a chance to see the world differently, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening to Nicole's version of her experience up there, but also the work that she does to try and change things down here, because we want our kids to have a better future. We want our grandkids to live on a planet that we protect. And whilst all is not lost, there's lots that needs to be done. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can get more episodes over here, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to click there. I want you to subscribe. What does it cost you? Nothing. It costs you nothing to subscribe. But whenever I make content, you are going to be the first to see it. So go on, click over there, get subscribed, come and join us on our journey.